Welcome everyone to Catalio Conversations, where we interview founders and CEOs across innovative healthcare and AI who are building the next generation of disruptors in the space, from drug discovery to autonomous labs to clinical intelligence and beyond. I'm your host, Martha Petrocheilos, and with me today we have Suchi Saria, the founder and CEO of Bayesian Health, a company using AI to help hospitals detect life-threatening conditions earlier, which helps clinicians act faster and improve patient outcomes. Suchi, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I'm so happy that you're here with me. You have spoken about losing your nephew to sepsis and that this was a big reason and a big driving force behind you starting Bayesian. How did that really shape your mission in building that company? And how much of what you've built is personal?
I started working in AI almost 2 decades ago in applications of AI in medicine around 2009. At Hopkins, as a professor at this intersection of AI and health, we were having such a blast. It really became the fuel for moving from can this work to this needs to work. It's like 350,000 deaths in the US to sepsis alone.
That is an incredible number.
We're talking about one preventable complication. I want to reduce this pain and suffering. How do we have hospitals today that are unsafe, where we have the treatments if only the patients had been caught and we'd applied these treatments in a timely way?
It's nonsensical. And I think what you're building is so incredible because of that reason, right? And of course, as you said, before you even started Bayesian, you were thinking about those problems. You were analyzing them. You were a researcher for over 2 decades, right? At Johns Hopkins, you were at Stanford, you were at Harvard. What pushed you to say, this personal thing happened? I know that I can build something that helps so many other people in the United States and beyond. What was it that helped you understand that academia in itself just wasn't enough? You had to build something.
There's a very real gap between the research to the bedside. In an area as complicated and new as AI, think back to 2015, 2016, we needed to find ways. Is this tool going to work not just in the lab, but in the real world? How is it going to get integrated and delivered at the bedside so it's simple and not futuristic? Can we drive clinician trust? So there was a lot of newness here and gaps that needed to be understood and filled. Academia spends a lot of time thinking about, is it possible? Can it be done? Building Bayesian meant everything we needed to do fill that gap so that it's real, practical, and easy to use, not just at the premier research institutions, but rural hospitals in America.
That distinction that you mentioned between academia and having your own business is very important because you could be publishing research, but that doesn't really change what happens at the bedside in the hospital in real time.
It's been just so fascinating and such a rapid learning experience.
Yeah.
See this translated across. I've had a front row seat into the most intense adventure for the last 10 years.
That has real life impact and real worldwide effect. Was there something that you tried early on at Bayesian that didn't work out? And how did that shape how you're thinking about building the company?
I often tell my team, you have to start by assuming that the first 5 things you try will not work. I have probably 99 stories of things that didn't work. But let me start with something that is exciting. Last week, we announced FDA clearance for our work in sepsis. It's the first continuous AI monitor for sepsis.
Congratulations.
Very exciting because it now makes it possible for a system like Bayesian's to continuously monitor patients the second they touch the ED throughout their length of stay in the hospital, watching for signs and symptoms even before clinician suspicion and flagging these cases and making it possible for the clinicians to catch, treat, and provide timely treatment. Getting here was anything but easy. I sometimes describe it as climbing Everest 7 times. When we first built the system, we literally had 2 physicians who used the tool. 2. And I'm sitting there saying there's so much data showing this thing works. And I've integrated it within your workflow. This should be easy. Why is it only 2? And of course, we had a lot of learning to do. How do you make the system accurate and early enough so that it's providing clinical signal that is really actionable?
I imagine you had to build around the daily life of what it means to be a clinician. You mentioned what it means to be a nurse, what it means to be a doctor in a busy hospital, and all that this comes with, right? The fast decision making, overload, fatigue. Did Did you find anything that really surprised you?
Absolutely. In some sense, we're very much cutting through the thicket of the forest, needing to trailblaze to some extent. Historically, the way medical devices have worked, you get clearance and then you put it in a real world environment to try to get it to work. We flipped the book to say, why don't we start by first implementing it in the real world? So once we saw results in research setting, we were able to put it in the lab, iterate, integrating with the EMR, the electronic medical record, the system that clinicians use day in, day out, is a very challenging problem. It took us nearly 2 years to figure out how do you so deeply integrate with the EMR that this feels like natural.
It has to be custom made between the big and the small.
Exactly. A platform that enables different workflow scenarios in real world settings.
So in plain English, a patient is admitted into the hospital. What happens from that moment till the point where the Bayesian system flags to the hospital that something is wrong? How does the system work, if you want to walk us through it?
Absolutely. So they show up to the emergency department. The system, it's plugged in into the background in the electronic health record. The second the patient shows up and there's a first interaction, the system starts listening and it starts pulling data from prior encounters. So now we know what the clinical history is and what their comorbidities are. We start building a sense for what their expected baseline should look like. We've also learned how sepsis shows up in different subpopulations. Are we seeing any of those similar patterns? We start to flag this case within the clinician workflow, whether it's in the ED to a nurse and the clinical team, or if it's in a hospital, the care team is made aware.
So Bayesian is acting in many ways as a second set of eyes in the hospital. They're not making the clinical decision. They're helping the clinicians make the right decision by noticing the pattern earlier.
Absolutely. It's like a real-time, continuous clinical intelligence layer that's watching patients across a whole host of these important critical conditions, making sure those moments that matter, where you could have come in and intervened and really changed the outcomes, don't get missed.
Hospitals have so much data, so it is about knowing how to use it in a way that matters. And of course, hospital AI has a bad reputation for crying wolf. Previous early alert warning systems had such high false alerts that clinicians started ignoring them completely. How is Bayesian different to that, and how did you get clinicians to trust your system?
That's one of the challenging things we have to struggle with. When you're presenting this idea, it's very easy for system leaders to be skeptical. Their early experiences have not been very good. A story from a hospital system where we partnered an academic medical center in upstate New York. They had experimented with all sorts of tools for sepsis, and they got 1% adoption. It's sad because their leadership felt, we've already tried this multiple times and we don't want to lose face with our clinicians again. Because of our outcome data and because of our history and our approach, they were willing to give this another shot, and thank God they did. Today at that system, a year and a half in, we're at 85% plus adoption.
That is incredible. And I have some stats for later in this.
I obviously would like that to be above 95. Historically, the vast majority, 80 to 90% of these alerts are happening after clinicians have already initiated treatment. They look a little bit more like nuisance alert, not really giving you the lead time that you're expecting. There's not much accuracy around it. You're looking at a needle in a haystack problem. You have to approach the problem entirely differently from how people have done it before.
You could have the best statistically impressive model, yet if the clinicians don't trust it and don't use it, it doesn't have much impact. You have to get to the bottom of this trust, because that's how the system really finds its worth and reaches its maximum impact.
Absolutely. If something doesn't drive action and decision, you're not going to get the outcome.
I think when you get that trust, right, the impact can be enormous. Your targeted real-time early warning system, it detected sepsis, we mentioned, 6 hours earlier than traditional system. It's been linked to 18% less mortality rate. Now, that is incredible. Do you have a real story from a hospital where that lead time really made a difference when it came to that patient? What do those 6 hours give the doctors time to do?
This is actually a story at a leading academic medical center. Patient shows up, our system flagged this case in the ED. This clinician goes, I don't think this person is septic. This was their first encounter with the system. They started from a place of cynicism. When this patient was flagged, the particular marker it was pointing out was worsening kidney function or elevated creatinine. The clinician dismissed it, saying, this patient is just dehydrated. I don't think this has anything to do with sepsis. Patient ended up next day being on the floor experiencing septic shock. Clinicians have to do this heroic job of taking the little bit of time they have, taking the data that is available to them immediately, and making the best judgment they possibly can. We brought this data back to the ED, to that physician, and that changed his mind. For every future case, he saw things very differently. It got him to be more curious when a case was flagged, because our data had showed that we don't cry wolf. When we do flag a case, there's good reason to go quickly look in. We build the system in a way that makes it very easy to understand why this case was flagged. So showing every hour matters.
It's really tough to argue with those numbers. Real-time patients are helped with your system. Did you see clinicians change their attitude towards your system? You, of course, answered it and said, of course, how can you not? Do you think the biggest impact is saving critically ill patients or the deceptively stable ones?
We call it sneaky sepsis. That's the term we use inside our company with our collaborators, our partners. There's the obvious sepsis case. 50% of the time, their clinicians were very good at catching, doing what's needed to treat them in a timely way. Outcomes in that patient population, good. The remaining 50 are various versions of sneaky sepsis. It could be a young, healthy adult who is there for a completely different reason, or maybe for a slightly older patient, 50, 55-year-old, some kind of surgery or elective procedure, an open wound, where that progresses into sepsis rapidly, but mostly goes unnoticed. I think those are the scenarios where this can make a big difference.
You started with sepsis, and now you're thinking about expanding into other diseases. What makes a condition a good fit for Bayesian? How do you decide where to go next?
We always start from clinical impact. What's an area where if we could move from today's paradigm of reactive care, use this real-time clinical intelligence layer to proactively identify these cases and set up workflows so that you can improve treatment times, more precisely address what needed to happen? Can we change clinical outcomes dramatically? Two, can we save time and make it easier for our clinicians to practice and unburden them from administrative tasks? And third, can we create financial margin? Because in many of these areas, it's very costly to take care of these conditions, which really dramatically impacts the health system as well. If we can do these three wins, that makes it easier to become more of a no-brainer.
So it doesn't just matter, can we predict this, perhaps, but can we meaningfully change what happens next here? And you, of course, mentioned hospitals, and I wonder, how do they prioritize those use cases? Is it through clinician burden? Is it mortality? Is it cost?
Hospitals are very in tune to cost. That is really the number one problem today. And we're aware of that. I know ultimately people go into medicine because they want to do the right thing. But that's just their tough reality today.
You co-founded the Coalition for Health AI, and you brought together Mayo Clinic, you brought together Google, the FDA to set standards for AI in healthcare. Why is it important that this exists?
Several colleagues of mine, Dr. John Halamka at Mayo, Nigam Shah at Stanford, we each individually have done a lot of work in the field. We were realizing that there was a lot of excitement for AI, right? We can do this, we can do that. But many of these were maybe groups with under a year of expertise. Suddenly, we were seeing this explosion of pitches, but with almost no understanding of, is this actually going to work? Is it safe? Is it effective? Part of the purpose of forming CHAI was to really up-level best practice knowledge through collaboration. How do you take expertise that now sits with a few people in the field and democratize that?
And that's so important, right, Suchi? Because one bad AI deployment case, it really damages that trust in the entire category.
And that's exactly what we wanted to avoid. We wanted to avoid an AI winter because we knew the stakes were so high. There's just so much good we could do. And the worst would be if we missed the opportunity because of a few bad actors.
There is a lot of AI that is being sold in hospitals right now. How do we differentiate between the tools that actually change the outcomes versus those that just look good? What type of tools are more AI theater as opposed to truly making a difference in the industry?
The most important thing is, how do you design not just a score or a pop-up, but really solutions that are driving critical actions? Is this system built so it's proven in the real world? Or is it one of those systems that's looking at retrospective data in a lab and measuring how the model is performing in lab data alone? Are you partnering to drive outcomes?
Which is what you have done with Bayesian. And it goes back to what we said about, does it have real life impact to the clinicians, in a real hospital in real time. It's not just research. What do you want the clinicians to feel when they use whatever AI tool it is that they do? Is it more confidence, perhaps? Is it relief? Is it less being overburdened and less overload?
In medicine, when you're facing the patient's family, you always say, I did everything I could. And we want Bayesian to allow them to say that in a way that they can be confident.
This is very hopeful. Thinking about hospitals in the future, adopting those AI tools, do you think that changes the job of a doctor and a nurse in the future? Will they have to do more of something and less of something else?
When you follow a clinician around, you'll see how much busy work they have to do. You also see how much annoying work they have to do. So much admin. Somebody is literally manually abstracting all that for individual cases. Clinicians get dinged if patient indeed was septic, but certain things weren't done in a timely fashion. There's all this theatrics around it. Can you just make the right thing the easy thing to do? It's just the perfect place for the second set of eyes that can learn, that can flag, prioritize, set up the right workflows to make the right thing just super easy to do.
If we take a step back, we imagine that the right AI tools do end up scaling. What does that look like? The hospital of the future looks very, very different. What does it do differently?
Clinicians get the time and judgment back. They're really operating at the top of their license, not burdensome, painful, administrative work, like a frontline experience perspective, proactive instead of reactive, a strategy that is sustainable, that is scalable, that hardwires care excellence, reliable, high-quality care. That's the kind of health system I'd want to be in the leadership team of.
Such a hopeful view of the future and how you build Bayesian. This is the perfect moment to move on to our quick fires. One myth about AI in healthcare that you would like to kill in one sentence.
The myth that the clinicians are the bottleneck to AI adoption. Yes, some are resistant, but many are very open-minded.
One condition beyond sepsis where you think AI early warning systems will save the most lives in the next 5 years.
Clinical deterioration more broadly.
One thing about how hospitals operate today that makes you think there has to be a better way.
A physician is easily expected to monitor 40 plus critical things, a system that is a trusted, reliable clinical intelligence layer that is proactively providing them support so that these critical moments are not missed. That feels like a no-brainer to me.
Good answers, the quick fires. Thank you so much, Suchi, for being here with me today. I think you're incredible and what you're building is saving so many lives. I think what's so exciting about Bayesian and what it does is that it's really cracked what I would call one of the biggest problems in hospital AI. Trust is the most important thing. It got clinicians to trust it. It got clinicians to use it. And we see 89% adoption across hospitals in the United States. Those numbers are very, very difficult to achieve in hospital AI. We see almost 20% reduction in mortality. Those are real numbers and real outcomes. And you've built that. So thank you. You're incredible. And thank you all for tuning into Catalio Conversations. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, share, like, and comment. And please stay with us for more conversations with founders and CEOs who are shaping the future of healthcare and AI. See you next time.